All right, ladies and gentlemen, just a quick announcement, if we could please have your attention. So our event today is live, and so just so you know, as we get started and Mary Jo starts to speak, if we could just keep the place quiet. We do have a live show going on today. We really appreciate you all being our live studio audience. We're very happy to have you all here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mary Jo Pankow, President and CEO of the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us at Changemakers as we celebrate the powerful work of strengthening families and building robust communities across Nebraska. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the distinguished guests joining us today. We are honored to have elected and state officials with us. Thank you for being here and fueling our shared vision for Nebraska's future. Today, our communities face real challenges, attracting and keeping families. For businesses, success depends on retaining talented employees. When workers are distracted or absent, often because of issues like unreliable transportation or childcare, it hurts your bottom line. Imagine what's possible if we remove those barriers, employees focused and present, families choosing to stay, and communities that thrive. That's why Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, together with our many partners, is leading a statewide prevention initiative. Our goal is simple: help families before problems become crises. When families succeed, businesses and communities grow. Over the next 75 minutes, you'll see how Nebraska Children's partnerships and programs not only support youth and families, but also drive Nebraska's economic growth. Get ready for inspiring stories of impact and innovation shaping our state's future. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Now it's my pleasure to share with you a short video that breaks down Nebraska Children's work across the state.
At Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, we believe every child deserves the support to thrive in their home, in their classroom. At Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, we believe every child deserves the support to thrive in their home, in their classroom, and in their community. Since 1997, we've worked hand in hand with families, educators, and leaders across the state to build stronger families, which means stronger communities, a stronger workforce, and a stronger Nebraska economy. Through our Connected Youth initiative, we support young Nebraskans who don't have traditional family support, providing one-on-one coaching to help them reach their financial, educational, and career goals. We help them not just survive, but succeed and become productive members of Nebraska workforce and communities. With Beyond School Bells, we're expanding access to quality after-school and summer learning opportunities. These programs help keep kids safe, help them explore future careers with hands-on discovery, and give working parents peace of mind. Through Rooted in Relationships, we've helped caregivers build the skills that nurture children's social and emotional growth during early development, because strong relationships create healthy kids. These efforts help kids develop the soft skills like teamwork, problem solving, and resilience that they need for their educational and career goals. In 2024, more than 100 youth experienced the joy of Camp Ketchup, a powerful weekend that reunites brothers and sisters separated by foster care. For these children, connection, healing. Our Sixpence program ensures that even our youngest Nebraskans, from prenatal stage to age 3, get the best possible start. We fund and guide high-quality early education programs that meet families where they are, focusing on the children most at risk of falling behind. In 2024 alone, our community-based prevention systems reached over 14,000 adults and nearly 12,000 children across the state, connecting them to the tools, trusting relationships, and time they need to be stronger. When families aren't struggling, they are able to be productive employees and contribute to their communities. Together, we are building stronger families, creating a resilient workforce, fueling economic growth. Join us, share the story, be the support. Together, we're building the Nebraska that every child deserves. Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, cultivating the good life for all our children.
What an amazing video. Hello, my name is Dr. Lawrence Chatters, and I serve as the Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Capacity at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. I'm also very proud to serve as the chairperson of the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation Board of Directors. Today, we are coming to you live from Lincoln, Nebraska, with a group of panelists that will share how Nebraska Children and Families Foundation is working in local communities to build supportive, preventative networks, giving employees a place to turn when they need assistance. Workforce is a consistent topic of conversation throughout our state, and building a more sustainable version of it is imperative for our future success. Our sustainable workforce includes those that can afford housing, find childcare, and have reliable transportation. Our panelists today include Katie Thurber, Nebraska Department of Labor Commissioner, Brady Rhodes, Adams, Clay, Nuckolls, and Webster County Collaborative Coordinator, Dr. Josh Kramer, Executive Vice President for Nebraska Children, and Lily Champion, a University of Nebraska-Lincoln student studying elementary education. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and thank you to all our sponsors. Many of you are here in the room today or joining us virtually. Special shout out to our platinum sponsors, Buffett Early Childhood Fund, White's Investment Management, and Suzanne Shore. Without our sponsors, this event wouldn't be possible. So please make sure to check out your program for the full list. I see we also have some people joining us virtually, which we're excited to have our virtual attendees all throughout Nebraska. Scotts Bluff, Grand Island, Fremont, Wahoo. I see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to support Nebraska Children's work today, make sure you scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen or your program to give. And I'll be returning to that message throughout this event today. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. If you happen to have a question for our panelists, please use the submission form in front of you. We will make sure to have a Q&A later in the program. So panelists, if you could each take a moment and describe your background and what role it plays in Nebraska's workforce development. And we're going to go ahead and start with Katie.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Katie Thurber. I'm the Commissioner of Labor for the Nebraska Department of Labor. So hopefully just with my title alone, you can see that my role plays a vital part in workforce development across the state. I see Casey Bayless in the audience today. We used to talk about it was his job to get people to Nebraska. It was my job to keep them. That only works if people have a career, and that starts with workforce development. Our agency is the Workforce Development Agency within the state of Nebraska, and it's my role and our agency's mission to connect people to employment success.
And my name is Brady Rhodes. I'm the collaborative coordinator for the Community Impact Network. That's one of 20 different community collaboratives throughout the state. If you don't know your community collaborative, get to know them. The role of the collaborative is to help knit together all the folks in the community who are doing the social well-being work of families and children and mixing private business together with the public entities. It's how we all swim together and do it well. And so that creates a landscape within the communities of people that are connected to supports, whether they're emergency supports or whether they're just, hey, I need some moment in time assistance here. And that provides the foundation that people need to be able to enter the workforce well and stay in the workforce. And that's why the community collaboratives are so key.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Champion. I'm a freshman at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Originally, I'm from Aurora, working in after-school programs, and now in Lincoln, working in before and after-school programs. So my role is just kind of here to share my experiences and what I've learned throughout being involved in education.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining. I'm Josh Kramer. I'm an executive vice president at the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. I've spent a couple decades doing intergenerational poverty interruption work, is what I like to call it. And that work continues here at the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. We work from cradle to career. We work through partnerships like many of you in this room. We have 6 robust initiatives that are built around the needs that Nebraskans have, like after school, early childhood, older youth work, and some other things we'll talk about. So it's a pleasure to be here with you, and we look forward to engaging.
Well, thank you so much. I see we have a lot of experience on deck today. Excited to hear from you all. Now, could you please each describe the workforce challenge you see in the community, specifically the community that you're from? And Katie, maybe you could start with that.
Absolutely. So in my role, I have to look at this from a state perspective, but I think the reality is it doesn't vary that much across the state. I grew up in Gearing, Nebraska, and the issue there was retaining existing talent and attracting new talent for the available roles. Making sure that people are skilled for the roles that exist within a community is a very critical part to solving some of the workforce challenges we see. But I think that's common across the state. As I visit more and more communities, it seems to be something that we hear over and over again is we have workers, but they're not skilled in the jobs and careers that we have here. And so that leads to a lack of talent retention and looking elsewhere if you are an individual. But I think part of that is early exposure to the available careers. The more that makes youth much more likely to stay and be interested in the careers that allow them to thrive in their home community. And part of what I loved about being from the Scottsbluff Gearing area, we do see you, is in that community, there was so much access to meaningful leadership opportunities. And that helped build me as a leader and helped me get to this role that I have today. And I think being able to make that impact through community and civic engagement platforms is something that we really need to expose and develop because it really helps people go forward even if they don't stay in that community. Hopefully they stay in that state and can contribute, and it's something we can build workforce development opportunities around.
Thank you. Brady, how about you? What are some of the workforce challenges that you see in the community that you're from or the communities that you serve?
Yeah, so South Central Nebraska, low unemployment in a state of low unemployment. I think that's probably one of the things that everybody experiences. And what our employers are seeing are that they're putting out positions that do not then get applications. Whereas 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you get plenty of applications. Now there's none. And the folks that are applying are maybe not at the level that they're looking for. So employers are having a tough time retaining employees because they're struggling. They're a little bit closer to the margin. And so you have situations we just had 2 weeks ago where the employer had somebody who was going to lose childcare and was not going to be able to stay in the job. And so that's where this would not have bubbled up maybe 6 years ago. The person would have come to the job and they would have had that stuff figured out. It's not necessarily the case these days. And so people have higher needs, they're living a little bit more at risk. And so I think the balance between how do we support the folks who are looking to get into these jobs and then keep them there is a real key challenge. The other piece is that we have lots of workforce development opportunities. We have lots of job openings. The folks who are available to work in those jobs, that's 20 different steps to get from where I'm at, struggling with poverty. We have a 12.9% poverty rate in our county. To get to that opportunity, I've got to deal with the life overwhelms of all the things, whether it's just drama or whether it's the things I have to deal with that I can only see right in front of my face that one day. Whereas getting to this thing is a 3 or 4 month process. And so we've got to have the supports in place in our community to walk alongside people. That's what we're really trying to work on. And I think that's a large part of this conversation. How can we build the support so that people can get connected to those opportunities? It doesn't just happen with a magic wand.
Excellent. Lily, how about you?
Yeah, so growing up in Aurora, there was not a lot of opportunities for children to be involved. Me personally, growing up, wasn't really involved in a lot of after school, before school experiences. And I really think that had an impact on my social life growing up. I think after school, it was common for you to just kind of go home and live your life until returning the next day at 8 a.m. So seeing that lack and need in my community really inspired me to get involved at an early age. So I began working at the Edgerton Explore Center. For those of you who are not familiar with that location, it is in Aurora, Nebraska. It is a hands-on science learning museum. And at the Edgerton, we provide after-school programming and summer camp programming for elementary age students. So in middle school, I began volunteering my time, and then in high school, began working there for after school and summer camp. And I just really saw that the need in those students was high, and that our my fellow coworkers that were there, we really needed a change in how that system was working and what we are contributing to that after school program. So I really think just understanding that there's a need in a lot of smaller communities and having those strong workers to bring what our programming needed. So that really helped me change the cycle of just bringing something new into our community and making the Edgerton more known.
Excellent. And Josh?
Yes, well, since we're doing this, I grew up in Hastings, Nebraska, so I'm very happy that Brady's doing good work in South Central Nebraska. My parents still live there, but I am going to switch, I think, to sort of an organizational view of some of the workforce challenges that I think Nebraska children have seen over the years. Two of the biggest things that people need in order to work are going to be high quality early care and education, and after school and summer programming. So both of these things have already been mentioned here. And I think that us recognizing the very simple fact that it's pretty hard to be fully employed or be your best self if your children don't have somewhere safe to go. There's also a big economic impact in our communities. And so I pulled just a few numbers for those of you that are numbers people. I won't do this too much, but the lack of early child care and education in Nebraska cost us $639 million in lost wages last year. We also know that early childhood has an average return on investment of about 13%. So those of you who are accustomed to investing money, early childhood is a good place to go, especially I think for our communities. And then this just came out a couple weeks ago, but lack of after school and summer costs our nation around $330 billion a year. That's billion with a B. And then if we go to low literacy rates, which is another topic that we talk about a lot at Nebraska Children, that costs our country $2.2 billion in lost productivity. And literacy is a root cause issue for employment and a lot of the things that we're trying to prevent with our statewide prevention system here in Nebraska.
Thank you so much. It's really clear that there are a lot of challenges, and those challenges exist across our state. Katie, what are the biggest barriers Nebraska employers face in finding and keeping qualified workers?
Thank you. I pulled some numbers as well. I do love numbers. So spoiler, I have a math degree. But at the Department of Labor, one of the things we do that I think is a little underutilized is we conduct labor availability and household availability studies. And so what that means is we survey employers, and then we also survey the job seekers in a community to try and get at data as to what might be some of the good things, but also some of the concerns so we can develop accurate programming. We recently released our state compilation of that. And within that, 86% of the responding employers reported a difficulty finding a worker for at least one job opening that they had. That goes to Brady's point of you post jobs, nobody applies. But across all areas of the state, the lack of applicants is the most common issue. Nearly 90% of employers have said they don't have enough applicants. The hiring difficulties vary depending on what industry and occupation you're looking at. For example, food services, especially food manufacturing, struggle to find applicants available for the required shifts. When you have to be open 24/7 or have that third shift, having the daycare and accessibility for parents in those evening hours is an additional challenge. Also, transportation, if you're looking at that industry, having the necessary licenses, being able to pass drug screens and background checks is a very common concern from employers. Employers also report issues with the quality of applicants that they receive. 57.1% of employers report applicants have a poor work history. 55.8% report lack of experience, and 48.5% report lack of occupation-specific skills. We break that into 3 specific categories, but really they all mean the underlying quality is a concern. So this issue of quality applicants could, in theory, indicate that we are not training a sufficient number of job seekers in the right areas to meet the needs of the employers in those communities. But part of what makes this data so interesting is then we also get the job seeker perspective. And when we're looking at the job seeker perspective, we ask them what barriers they're facing. And while most employers say there are not enough applicants, over 60% of job seekers say there are not enough local area job opportunities for them. And so that could indicate a lot of things, but it could be limited awareness. We don't do a good job of making sure that people know what is actually available in the area. It could be limited opportunities for the skills that they have. So are we training for the right skills? And do they truly align with the opportunities in the area? But additionally, with that, over 55% of employers say applicants' wage demands are too high. But 70% of job seekers cite inadequate pay as a barrier. So there seems to be a little disconnect as to what employers think they should be paying versus what job seekers think they should be paid. And I think a lot of that tends to go on to what is a livable wage. And that's a pretty deep discussion that would take more than the 3 minutes that I have to respond. But I think it's worth noting that there is very much a disconnect between what employers think they can afford to pay and what job seekers think they should be paid.
Well, thank you so much for that information and those numbers. Speaking of some of those barriers, how does workforce development tie into Nebraska's broader economic development goals?
Yes. So I think workforce development is the foundation of economic development. I see some of economic development is here. Hi, Joe. But in order to grow Nebraska, we must have a skilled workforce to keep and attract quality employers in the state. We can bring in as many employers, as many new people as we want. If we don't have the skilled workforce, economic development's not sustained. And we want sustainable economic development that truly grows Nebraska. And I think that starts with keeping our kids in Nebraska. We must make sure we have strong career pathways and opportunities to keep Nebraska's kids in Nebraska. I see Department of Ed here. We've been working very hard in partnership to make sure that we're doing a better job of developing these pathways together. And just yesterday, Governor Pillen signed an executive order creating the Good Life, Great Careers Initiative. This initiative is really exciting, and it's focused on developing a quality skilled workforce in Nebraska. Under this initiative, we're focusing on connecting Nebraskans not to jobs, but to careers in Nebraska. And by investing in apprenticeships and aligning programs across agencies and creating those clear pathways, we're making Nebraska a place where businesses want to invest and where people want to live, work, and thrive. I think this focus on workforce development is truly the key to the broader economic goals for the state becoming achievable.
Excellent. Lily, I'm really interested to get your take. What are some of the biggest concerns that you have or that your peers have shared with you about securing long-term employment in Nebraska?
Yeah, so a concern I personally have about securing long-term employment would just be the amount of support that a school system is willing to give whenever I'm entering my first year of teaching. I think support throughout understanding that first year freshly out of college can be very financially stressful, You're paying off previous student debt, you're paying off future debt if you have the wish to go back to school. Just understanding that that can be new. And then I also think my peers could agree with just like relational like support, just understanding that with your coworkers, that they can kind of get on your level, understand that they were once there too. That first year can be very stressful, and just feel like a welcome spot in that new system.
That's excellent. So following up on that, what ideas do you have for how together we can work to address some of those issues that you just brought up?
Yeah, I think a really good idea would be just providing a long-term path for those new teachers or educators to follow. Just showing you, hey, if you start here, then you can then work your way up to here. That really just provides a good like safety personally, and just knowing that even if you don't feel super secure right now, you can work your way up there, and it'll be worth it. I think overall, like I said before, just kind of getting on their level, understanding what it feels like to be that new person, and freshly out of college or freshly out of your education. Also providing resources to help them go back to school or encourage them to go back to school to work towards that higher degree. Obviously, then you can make more money. You will know more, your workers will be more educated, and it'll help everyone all along. So I think if your system has a close-knit community, that can overall help the whole entire system.
Lily, thank you so much. We really appreciate having your student voice on this panel. Josh, how do Nebraska Children and Family Foundation supported initiatives help address workforce challenges that Nebraska businesses are facing?
Sure. So we do a whole lot of stuff. I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick, but I would encourage you to check out our website or contact us for additional information. I would say first and foremost, when we talk about keeping good employees in Nebraska and making sure they're prepared, we need community-wide prevention systems, and that's what Brady is here representing today, and several of you as state partners that work with us and funders and others. Those 19 community collaboratives that are like what Brady is describing provide wraparound supports, cradle to career supports, older youth supports that can all help stabilize the family so that people can prosper and reach their full potential. Nebraska Children provides training, technical assistance, evaluation, marketing to support those collaboratives, and also we try to combine public and private resources as well. So I think that's essential. I've already mentioned early childhood and after school summer, and I'm going to do it again because those are key indicators of what it would take to have, solve workforce problems. Early child care access and quality have been large areas of focus for Nebraska Children for all 28 years that we've been around. We have 3 significant early childhood initiatives. That would be Sixpence, Communities for Kids, and our Rooted in Relationships program. All 3 of those things work together with you, state partners, and others to try to support the early childhood field all together. Early childhood employees are maybe not always appreciated as much as they should be. I think they make about an average of $13.88 an hour. And so obviously keeping those that we have in the field is a very important thing to do. I'm not going to tell you all of our evaluation results, but I'll pull up one from our Rooted in Relationships program, which focuses solely on supporting the early childhood workforce. When people participate in that program, those providers actually show an 80% retention rate, which is pretty impressive when you look at the national retention rate at a low of about 24%. So obviously, we're doing some good work there with early childhood folks. And then our older youth work, after school, summer work, Beyond School Bells, and the Connected Youth Initiative. Again, this field is underappreciated, and so we do what we can to build that field, provide curriculum, funding, resources, and innovative ideas to support those programs from across the state. And I'll close this part with, we are also working very closely with the Nebraska Department of Education and Department of Health and Human Services and others to build the family literacy and family engagement field and those workers, because family literacy is actually a dual win. You get adult outcomes around employability, and we also can get more people in that field so we can do more family literacy across the state. These are very powerful outcomes that we can report from those programs. And so those are the kinds of things that I'd highlight at this point.
Josh, thank you so much for sharing that information. Brady, how does financial stability create broader economic benefits in Nebraska?
All right, this is my soapbox, y'all. So it's a key one for us. We said when our collaborative started, we first had to go through COVID. That was one reason we got organized. But then we were left with, okay, we've got all these people working together. What can we do with this? And the number one thing that rose to the top was poverty alleviation. We said if we can invest in individuals, that's going to ripple out to the community and make a profound community impact. And we had private partners at the table, we had businesses, we had employers at the table, and they all got behind this idea that if we can address poverty alleviation, we'll learn how to work together better. We're going to create systems. We're going to support people through the longevity of their time, that cradle to career, and it works. So we have a program in Hastings in our Fort County area called Bridging Forward. That's our poverty alleviation program, and it's a long-term involvement with individuals working their way from underemployment to higher wage employment. That's the whole idea behind it, is that we have a lot of people in our community who are underemployed, and it's kind of that, I'm here, how do I get to here, this higher wage job? I can get a job at Casey's, no problem, and it's going to pay me, and I'm going to get my money taken care of for my immediate bills, but it's not a long-term thing for me where I'm adding savings. And that's a real issue for Nebraska. We are asset poor. So in Nebraska, probably the number they're going to come up with here when the United Ways go through their ALICE study, which is happening soon, it's going to be around 38% of Nebraskans are asset poor, which means that you don't have enough savings for more than 3 months worth of expenses if your income stops. That's not just money, that's assets. So it could be cars that you could sell, it could be other items you can sell. So think about that. When you have that kind of asset poverty, you don't have time to get into that healthcare job because it's going to take a little while. So you need somebody to walk alongside you. So Bridging Forward walks alongside people for a year, meeting weekly. It's in a community environment, so there's childcare, there's food. It's an opportunity for people to get their feet underneath them in an environment of support. And what happens is it's now 3 years, we've increased people's income 154% on average. So that's real numbers. That's 11 people. It's not a lot. But now think about the household members that are part of that. There's another 57 kids and other adults in those households. So now we're talking real numbers. That's 70 people almost. So that's the number of people that are now getting impacted with that longevity. It's not just, hey, this is a moment in time income increase. This is now 2 years later. And so that's what we're really seeing, that economic impact then has. I'm going to blow Josh's return on investment numbers out of the water. When we invest, so it's going to cost us, it takes us about $6,000 a person in that program so far. That's our cost. Our return on investment to the community is $47,000. So that's income increase, that's saying they're buying things, that's tax increase, and that's also a reduction in government assistance. So you take all that, we're at 800% return. Sorry. Okay, and then the last thing I'd say is that it's a 2-generation deal. So we've got everybody that participates in our program, they have kids. And so now we're talking about impacting childhood poverty. There's a real number you can put in when you mitigate childhood poverty. Now you're up into the 2,000% return on investment, because we can anticipate that 20 years down the line, that child's going to be in better shape than they were if their parent had not gone through.
Brady, thank you very much. And 2,000% return on that investment sounds like a great deal to me.
Let's do it.
Josh, I'm really interested in your take on this. And so I really want to pose the same question to you. How does financial stability create broader economic benefits for Nebraska?
Yeah, well, first of all, Brady, you and I are on the same team. So we're adding up all these numbers.
All right.
For me, I think this answer's maybe a little bit simpler than some of the things that we talked about. Financial stability frees up individuals to live their lives, to thrive, to reach their dreams, to achieve that job or that better job. And I've wondered throughout my career why we want some folks to not reach that level of prosperity, because that's where we all need to go, especially in the state of Nebraska. If we want to be nationally competitive, we want people to move here to be the best place to raise children, all those kinds of things. What we really have to do is provide whole family support so that we raise every family. And I know you want me to talk longer than that, but I think that's about it for that one.
We appreciate the brevity. Thank you. Katie, from the state's perspective, how critical are support services like childcare and after-school programs to maintaining a state workforce?
Extremely. So I could just stop there, be really brief. 12.8% of the job seekers that we surveyed cited childcare availability as an obstacle to finding employment. And from the employer side, 18.5% of employers cite that same concern of employees' childcare is insufficient to do the job. So limiting or reducing these barriers is more critical now than ever as we look at the workforce shortages in Nebraska. where almost 90% of employers cite that they do not have enough applicants. We need to eliminate every barrier possible to keep that, so that we don't shrink that pool of skilled talent in Nebraska. Because just because you can't find childcare doesn't mean you aren't a skilled worker. And I think that's something to really keep in mind. 2025 in Nebraska, we've had record labor force numbers. But with those record labor force numbers and amazing labor force participation, employers still are struggling to find the level and type of talent that they need. And this tight labor market really puts an emphasis on worker availability. It's more critical than ever to have workers available for the job. And that requires reliable attendance, and that is significantly more achievable when we have services like childcare, after school programs, all of that being available. I even can think about it from a personal perspective. My son participates in the before and after school program through LPS. That has been a lifeline for me and my husband as we've gone on our employment journeys. When school doesn't start till 9 a.m. and I'm expected to be at work at 8 a.m., how do you make that happen without those services?
Thank you so much for sharing that and even adding a personal approach to it as well. We appreciate that. Josh, back to you. How do Nebraska Children and Family Foundation's initiatives and collaboratives help retain working families in Nebraska rather than losing them to other states?
Yep. Well, I previewed this a couple minutes ago. Maybe I got a little bit ahead of myself, but I think for families to stay in Nebraska or anywhere, we need complex intergenerational supports, right? So when we talk about this prevention system that we're trying to create together and that Mary Jo and others have been working on for 28 years, we are not perfect, but we have an infrastructure to build off of. And we have these initiatives around early childhood and after school to build off of. And so I think what we need to do is invest further in those particular structures, both from a public and private standpoint. And again, these things go without saying. You can't really work very well if your kid doesn't have a safe place to go. I mean, it's as simple as it can be, and it costs our economy a lot of money to not have enough slots. I also want to come back to literacy for a second. So Nebraska Children, again, has been building out a pretty comprehensive community-based family literacy strategy with our Nebraska Department of Education. That's critical for a healthy economy. And again, we could provide more numbers there, but I'll let that one sit for a minute. I think specifically your question, how do the collaboratives and the initiatives work together? They create synergy together. So the collaboratives work in their communities. These folks are not employed by us, they're supported by us, and they respond to their local community needs. We create a network and an infrastructure that ties to the state, that ties to regions, and we provide resources through our initiatives to support those key lifetime cradle to career moments, but communities also fund those things as well. And so I think we need that synergy to build between our community collaboratives and our initiatives so that we can make Nebraska the best place to live.
Outstanding. Lily, along the same lines, what kinds of supports must be in place for young people to feel secure about building a life here in Nebraska?
So I think a community with a lot to offer and make you feel more welcome. I kind of touched on this during my last question, but I just think right out of college, you just went through 4 years of like having everything at your hands and having all these welcome experiences and having all these people you can feel connected to. So I just think being in a community or being in a system that you feel like you are more than just a teacher or an educator or whatever you are acting as, I think can really provide people with that stability and just make them feel like they're supposed to be there during that time. That can help throughout the stressful parts. And yeah, so I just think if you have a community and people working around you who can bring a lot more and help you through those times can really help.
Young Nebraskans are really important, and we really appreciate your perspective. And as Katie was mentioning earlier, being able to keep those young people in Nebraska post-graduation from high school and college is incredibly important for our workforce. I know I referenced our sponsors before, but again, this event and the work we are doing to support a more sustainable workforce would not be possible without them. So shout out to our gold sponsors, Union Bank and Trust. Again, if what you are hearing is compelling and you want to support Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, go ahead and scan that QR code at the bottom of your screen. for you all virtually and for you all at the tables. You can scan it as well. Just make sure that you have an opportunity to let your voice be heard. And you heard about the 2,000% return on investment, a pretty great investment in my mind. So great opportunity. And now we're going to be back to our panel. And I'm going to toss this next question here to Brady. So Brady, what percentage of families you serve have seen increased work hours or job stability after accessing support through your collaborative or other Nebraska children-supported programs?
So we've got two cool things going on in our community where we can start to answer that. One is Bridging Forward, I talked about already. We have, for the folks that continue on, do that whole year, it's 100%. 100% have gone from part-time to full-time if they were part-time, or unemployed to employed. So that one we already know is working. And now what we're looking at is it employed at a higher level and they're retaining. So just a quick story. Just on Saturday, we had a community event and we're trying to do this qualified census tract support. We have one in Hastings. It's a needed area where we want to pay more attention to things. And one of the families that showed up there was our first group. And they were probably the ones that everybody, including themselves, were the most worried about. And they did not get to we're aiming to get them to 200% of the federal poverty line, which is close to a minimum, it's close to a livable wage, just not quite. They did not quite make it there by the end of the program. And so they kind of felt a little bit frustrated with things. But they stuck with their allies and stuck with things. Well, I hadn't seen them for probably 7 or 8 months. And they showed up at this picnic. This is a true story. This is on Saturday. They could not stop beaming because of the things that they had maintained that momentum that they got started. They had maintained that momentum. So the percentage you're talking about, I'm just going to tell this quick story. The guy was still employed. He was now getting trained in things that nobody else was getting trained. He was very proud to show me that. The mom came up and showed me all the pictures of her kids, 2 of whom she lives with, 2 of whom she is separated from and with other families. But she's now having these connected moments with all of them. And then she kept going, look at my Cash App. And she showed me her Cash App. The amount of savings that she had in there was just enough to make her whole face light up. So it's this wild thing about being able to say that little bit of work going from time where she was to full-time really made a difference. And it was that network underneath. The second thing that we're doing, and I think we're going to mention here at some point, Find Help is a new referral platform that we have that all the collaboratives are using. And it's an opportunity for us to track people that come in. We're wanting to give them support. Sometimes it's emergency issues. So sometimes, hey, my utilities are going to get shut off today and we need your help. Sometimes it is something not quite so emergent, but they're coming to us because they know that they're going to see some support. Some people are going to help them creatively problem solve the issue. And so we're tracking all this. And it's one of the things that I'm grateful to NCF for Nebraska Children and Families Foundation for, is because they're providing this infrastructure piece for us to be able to see, does that support make a difference? Now, sometimes those folks are coming in from another agency and they're getting referred to us. So they still use this Find Help platform. We know they're coming. There'll be it'll be up on our screen. We know this person's here. We've got a little bit of background information, but now we can start tracking 6 or 7 months down the line. Where's that person now? Are they showing up on people's screens, or are they, have they gotten the support they need? So we're not at a point where I could tell you that number right now, but I know just based on the anecdotal evidence that people that come in our doors that get that support, we're helping meet their needs and get into more full-time work.
It's amazing to hear those real life stories. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. As a community collaborative, what supports are you providing employers and employees, and what feedback have you received?
Yeah, so we have a cool thing going on where, like I said it earlier, we have employers dealing with employees who are living closer to the margins, and they were getting surprised by life events happening to their employees that in 5 or 6 years ago, they didn't have to necessarily worry about that childcare issue I mentioned. And so we provide employers with a wellness assessment. It's a social determinants of health assessment that they can give to their employees, but the information and responses come to us. And so what's cool about that is it's kind of anonymous. The employers get to present this thing as part of their wellness program or their staff engagement and say, hey, fill this out. It's going to help connect you to resources if you want. And they have to check a box. The person filling it out checks a box saying, I'd like somebody to contact me about this if there's a need. So that just comes right to our office, and it gives us a chance to say, hey, I see you've got this childcare issue. That's how the one happened 2 weeks ago. We got that alert earlier, and we were able to then handle that and get the childcare supports that we received from Nebraska Children and Family Foundation. So it's that network down at the bottom that's helping fix those issues. So that part's really key. I think our employers appreciate that. And then we're also trying out this Poverty IQ training. How many of you would say you're an expert at knowing what it's like to live in poverty? It's tough. There's a lot of things. If you don't come from poverty, you don't know the stories that you're having, that people are dealing with there. And so we do this poverty IQ training with employers that it's especially for like the managers or the kind of the manufacturing floor leader who's working with folks that maybe is coming from a background of, hey, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Why can't you get here on time? This poverty IQ training is just an opportunity to say, hey, you may not recognize that there's 17 different things that that person has to deal with in order to get here on time that are not your things. And so let's just talk about how we can have a little bit more of a human-centric interaction here and see if that makes a difference in that employee's retention.
That's outstanding. So what I hear you saying is that you're not only helping to train people better for the system, but you're helping to train people in the system better to accommodate the people.
Yeah, it's kind of it's both ways. We got to handle it both directions, and the employers have really been stepping up because they know they have to adjust.
Outstanding. So this next question is for Josh and Brady. And Josh, I'll have you answer this first. How are Nebraska Children's programs for young people aligned with Nebraska's future workforce needs?
Absolutely. So we've worked with older youth since the beginning of our organization, and we've engaged youth leaders like the one sitting right next to me over time. And we've learned a lot about what young people want in future careers and tried to develop programming around those things. We know that they're interested in high demand fields, environmental sustainability work, STEM fields, high-tech fields. They read the same stuff we do. They know where the future is going. And so what we've been doing around those opportunities is really trying to encourage work-based learning. So this is both with our Department of Education friends and others, where you get employability skills in a classroom structure or an out-of-school structure, along with academic skills at the same time. So it's a double whammy for Nebraska when we do that. I don't have time to mention all the things that we do with all of you, but I'm going to mention a few highlights. So with the Department of Education, we are doing a whole bunch of new post-secondary planning work, which we're very excited about. We have significant long-standing partnerships with the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically around the Learn to Earn to Achieve Potential, or the LEAP program, as some of you might know, and also Opportunity Passport. Both of those are aimed at helping young people achieve post-secondary success, and they're robust, long-standing partnerships. We also have a new effort with the Department of Education to focus on getting boys into the HEAL fields. And if those of you don't know what HEAL is, that means health, education, arts, and literacy. And so boys and men are underrepresented in those fields, and so we're making an effort to get them more engaged.
Brady, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll just play off of that. I think the kids the young people that are being impacted by schools, well, great. Let's keep the schools playing to those strengths. We want to bring the collaboratives in to help the young people and their families who are struggling, the unconnected youth. And that's where the schools need the help. They don't have the bandwidth to do that. And so the collaboratives, I think, can come in and walk alongside the schools and in partnership with the families. Just as an example, Hastings always has, this year was 120 students that they marked as being homeless. So that could be couch surfing, that could be transitional housing, that could be truly homeless, you're in a shelter. And the collaborative works together. There's no way that the school can handle getting those kids and those families housed. It's got to be a collaborative community effort. So if the community doesn't have a network of people working together to do that, those kids are going to remain homeless for the entire school year, and that's going to impact attendance, achievement, all those things. So the collaborative works together, and I think that's where we can have kind of a sweet spot, is work with those homeschool liaisons to provide those services, because the kids need the house, but it's because of the parents are struggling. They're not probably in the workforce at the level that they could be, but that's not the issue at the moment. The issue is let's get them housed in someplace safe so now they can put their feet underneath them and get into the workforce, and the kids can get to school.
Excellent. Lily, I have a same question for you. So how do programs supported by Nebraska Children prepare young people for Nebraska's growing industries?
Yeah, so in my senior year, I was selected through Beyond School Bells to be a part of the Youth Leadership Council. This was a scholarship, and in this, I was just able to work alongside many young people like me across the state of Nebraska and see how different after-school programs work and how they schedule everything. And it was really fascinating just to see the difference. I didn't think there would be a lot of that. So that was a really good opportunity for me. It allowed me to gain some leadership opportunities. I got to speak on another panel I got to actually go back to Aurora and lead trainings just to help my coworkers kind of understand that there is a need for this, and what they're doing does matter. So I think these programs are just really helpful. Obviously, I'm here again today on this panel because of this. And yeah, I think it just is really beneficial for students like me and has really played a big role in deciding that I want to pursue education.
It's really great to hear how these programs are working in action. So thank you. We appreciate your perspective. Brady, now for a bit of a challenging question for you.
Sure.
But what would happen to local workforce participation if Nebraska children-supported programs were no longer available?
I think you'd see a lot of the same things that Katie brought up, that there's a lack of penetration for the employment seekers getting into jobs because they don't have the supports needed to get there. You've got this great apprenticeship program that's going to be starting up. There's going to need to be some kind of pathway to help support people to get in there. And so if we didn't have the collaborative helping do that, I think people would be swimming in their own swim lanes, kind of wondering, where's everybody? And the people that are there are not ready to be into the workforce. They don't have the family structures in place. They don't have the assets to be able to do, I can take off work to go do this new program, or I can do something like that. So I think that's a key piece. If those things are not around, this workforce development program we're trying to do at the high schools, the schools need that kind of help. So the last thing I'd say, just really quickly in a few seconds, that we're providing the purpose and the meaning piece that's so key. I think Lily mentioned it, that kind of human-centric, you need somebody to fall back to in order to get into these higher level places, and the collaborators can be that. If they're not there, then that safety network is not going to be present.
Thank you for sharing that. Katie, what partnerships between state and local governments and community organizations are most effective for workforce development?
Yeah, so since becoming commissioner earlier this year, one of the first things I did was put an emphasis on building and establishing relationships. It's workforce development is done best in collaboration. And it's critical to have employers, training providers, K through 12, the community partners all at the table as we're looking at how we best build those programs. A lot of times when you look at what the state role is in that, if it's only state-led, it's never going to be successful. We're not going to get where the community needs. I have one perspective, but Brady has an in-depth perspective about his community and his people's needs. And so I think it's critical to have those relationships. It's critical that Brady and I have met before today, and we've been discussing things before today. And knowing that that's happening, I think is really an important step for Nebraska. At the department, we're really focusing on building programming that's coordinated on either a regional or industry basis as well. So for example, I'm very excited that yesterday we got to announce an intent to award a new manufacturing apprenticeship program. And I see some of the manufacturers are here that have been a part of that, which is an awesome statement as to how those partnerships intersect across. Not only are they at the table in building manufacturing programs, but they're at the table in the kids and family discussion. They're at the table in multiple different rooms. And I think that's part of what makes Nebraska so special, and the way that we can do this together with effective collaboration. When employers and training providers aren't competing against each other, but striving together, we build a skilled workforce that benefits all of Nebraska. And I just think that's the key component to success.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Josh, for employers and employees, can you explain how Find Help can be a useful tool for workforce development?
Yeah, Dr. Chatters, thanks for that question. I know Brady previewed this earlier, but those of you that might not know, Find Help is our state's interoperable closed-loop data system that unlocks resources for children, youth, and families. Okay, so what does that mean, right? Families work with our community collaboratives, our central navigator, and other partners across the state to establish a portal or an account inside of the Find Help system that matches them with the wraparound resources that they need, that helps Progress monitor what resources they're actually seeking out and what they're getting from those resources, and specifically around employability. There's robust information about places that people can get job training, job availability, gain employability skills, and all the things that we've been talking about all day long. So we're really happy about this Find Help system. It's been building out now for a little over a year, I think, year or two, and we are becoming more robust every day, but it can be used to access employability skills and all sorts of other supporting resources.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. Now, I know a lot about Nebraska Children and Families Foundation as a board member. There's a lot to know. There's a lot of great things that are continuously going on, and I'm continuously impressed by its impact. So we're going to take a few questions from the audience, and I have some of those questions here, so I'll pose those to you all. First, we had one come in for Katie. What can Nebraska employers do to help build career pathways for our young people?
Well, I think I'll go back to the manufacturing and maybe even the veterinary programs we're doing right now. So yesterday we announced a manufacturing apprenticeship pathway that we are building. But what is so neat about that program is it didn't start with me. It started with a group of employers recognizing that they've been complaining about the lack of employees for far too many years, and they wanted to be a part of that solution. And we're seeing that across Nebraska over and over again, whether it's teachers and education apprenticeships being built to have an apprenticeship pathway to become a teacher, or if it is veterinarians working with the university and the Department of Ag and Department of Labor to make sure that we have production animal veterinarians. That is critical for the rural communities in Nebraska and for sustainable ag in this future. And all of that is driven by starting with employers, not going at it alone, but recognizing that need and starting to problem solve. I would also be remiss to not push for work-based opportunity in high school. And the sooner you can get people to do work-based learning as an employer, the better. Open your doors to those students. If you're worried about liability or insurance, talk to me. I did a lot of work on making sure we got people into facilities because it matters.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. All of those things are incredibly important and critical to success. Lily, we've talked a lot about what's missing today, but we're going to put you on the spot here just a little bit, all right? What makes you confident about the potential of building a life here in Nebraska in the future?
Yeah, well, teachers are valued, that's for sure. So that makes me feel very secure going into a job, knowing that you're wanted, and just my previous experiences through my after-school programs, through learning things like this today, just understanding that it's a wanted profession. And so it really enhances the education I'm going through right now, and every experience I get to encounter, and just really know that those are motivating things. Also, just seeing others turn towards education and really find that love for it too. I think it takes certain passion. So just finding those that are very passionate towards the profession.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Brady, what is one thing you wish more people knew about poverty alleviation work in rural communities?
Oh, gosh.
One thing.
It's investing in people. It's really like that's not only going to feel better for that person that's getting invested in, but it's going to feel better for the people doing the investing. It just brings us back to a common core. Programs come and go, but that kind of ethos in Nebraska can be the thing that stays common to us all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Katie, you mentioned lack of access or availability of childcare. What do you think would solve that? School-sponsored childcare, churches, tax breaks for in-home childcare provider? Just a few suggestions here. How can we help? How can we help with this?
That's putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, I think the truth is there's no one size fits all to childcare. People's needs are different and communities are different. And so I think 6 regions, 1 Nebraska, has a great approach to how they're solving a lot of problems. Looking at it from a regional perspective and making it a little more localized, I think you're going to see more promising solutions. That's not to say there isn't statewide needs, but I think if we can look at it and really make sure we're solving the right problem, that's really critical.
Excellent. Great answer. Panelists, are there any last thoughts that you wish to share about how we can work together to build a more sustainable workforce? And we'll start with you, Josh, and then work our way back this way.
Sure. I guess to close, what I would say is that I think all of us want for all families what we have for our own families. And I think if we put it in that frame, we can avoid some of the negativity that might be around that type of discussion. And I think that for our systems that are so involved with the Bring Up Nebraska network and in our communities, we need to think about how systems navigate families instead of families having to navigate systems. And that's all of our job. Find Help's part of that job. What we do at Nebraska Children's part of that job. But the idea would be, what does that mean, right? Dad needs a job or a better job. Mom wants to build her literacy skills, and we have a young person that needs high quality after school. That's one thing for that family. That shouldn't be a trip to 3 different silos to figure that out. So how can we achieve that together?
Lily?
Yeah, I just think really starting us young, it's really been a beneficial thing for me just to know right away that I wanted to get into this profession. So I just really think offering small things, the little things really can impact the community. So just providing those resources for children and finding people that are built for those jobs and really pointing that out just at an early age can impact the rest of their career.
Thank you. Brady?
It's a broken record, but we invest in people and through poverty alleviation. It's going to adjust. It's going to impact every single metric. So I'm going to keep singing that swan song because it's so key. It's going to impact school. It's going to impact job retention. It's going to impact workforce development. We get to be better because of it. And we've got a lot of opportunities in this country right now to find ways to be better. And so when we do that, I know that's a little bit of a broken record, but I'm just going to keep on standing on that flame a little bit. Everything you do there is going to ripple out to everywhere else in a positive direction.
Excellent. Katie?
I just think one of the things I want to highlight is this conversation's happening at a really great time. There's a lot of opportunity in Nebraska going on, and the Good Life, Great Careers Initiative puts workforce development at the forefront of Nebraska's economic goals. And under this initiative, we're going to have a lot of opportunity to build new programs, whether it's apprenticeships or streamline programs, and maximize the existing efforts that are happening across the state. And as part of that, we'll be able to create a comprehensive strategic workforce development plan going forward. And that's something that the state hasn't had in a long time. I'm really excited to execute on that vision, and I'm really excited to have all of the partnerships and the stakeholders at this table as we go forth to do that. Because I think if we truly embrace that collaboration, we'll really be able to move forward and make sure that everyone here has not only has a good life, but also a great career.
I'll play out for that one really quick, just because I am sitting next to the Commissioner of Department of Labor. Like, how fantastic is that? And we have been able to talk. There's no state in the country where that's happening. Nebraska is really unique in that standpoint. I get to work with a lot of other folks doing similar cradle to career work in other parts of the country. And there's nothing like Nebraska that has this infrastructure in place, supported by NCF, but to be able to facilitate partnerships like this, to be able to work with Department of Economic Development, it's not happening anywhere else. So I'm appreciative. I'm real grateful.
Well, we've absolutely covered a lot today. One of the things that's always consistently impressed me about Nebraska, and anywhere I go and get the opportunity to talk about Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, is the fact that other states look at the way that Nebraska Children and Families Foundation is run as the model for how other places should be run in that regard. There's a lot of collaboration. There's people in the community that have the opportunity to get involved. Sometimes we wonder to ourselves who's not at the table, but we have to realize that not everyone has the opportunity to come to the table. Sometimes you have to take the table to them, however that table gets to them. And so what I think is important, and what our panelists have pointed out today, is that collaboration is key, and that we have to continue to look at this as an issue that impacts every single one of us in this state, because it absolutely does impact us when we think about the future of Nebraska, for people to be gainfully employed, for people to have childcare, for people to have all these wonderful opportunities to thrive and truly tap into the good life, as Katie said, with a good career. So we've covered a lot today, and we've really talked a lot about, this idea of Nebraska's workforce and how you can assist in creating more of the good life. Please consider investing today by using that QR code that you have on your screen or on your table. It's really easy and it's impactful. And we are very thankful for each and every one of you for participating in this opportunity today and being in this space. It demonstrates that you care. We Wish you a wonderful, happy rest of your day. Thank you very much.